or things you feel like you're being something, say a glory be. Just say the glory be out loud. Or even say it to yourself. Go to the corner and just say something. Say glory be, because what you're doing is you are professing that God is in charge of everything. And the demons, they want to come and disrupt that. They want to come and make a mess. They want to make something really bad. So say the glory be. What you do when you glory be, they run away from that, because what you're doing is you are professing that God is the Father, Jesus is the Son, the Holy Spirit is the third person of the Trinity. You are scaring the demons away. Okay, that's a very, very powerful one. Also, too, say a Hail Mary. Always say a Hail Mary, because the most feared person that the devil hates more than anyone else is the Blessed Virgin Mary, because he cannot corrupt her. We're going to talk about that as time moves on. We get close into about talking about Mary. So, all right. So, first and foremost, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Happy Saint Valentine's Day, by the way. It's not just Valentine's Day. It's not a Hallmark holiday. Okay. So I'll just take a minute or two to kind of tell you who Saint Valentine really, really was. Okay. Saint Valentine was an actual, he was an actual bishop, and they've kind of given him pushed him off to the side, because his ministry wasn't in regards to promoting like a world religion, a world Catholic religion. He was just a local bishop, so they did it. But today, actually, the Catholic Church has February 14th is Saint Cyril and Saint Methodius. They're celebrated today, and they're both brothers, and they're both apostles of Bulgaria. Okay, so they were bishops of Bulgaria, and they actually led a lot of people to come back to the Catholic Church after the Arian heresy. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that later on? Okay, we'll talk about that. So, we don't know, it says we actually don't know a lot about the saint, but he was either Roman priest or a bishop in central Italy who was martyred in the 3rd century. That's Saint Valentine. His remains are buried along the Via Flaminia in Rome. It's like a pilgrimage road that you travel on. The connection between him and romantic love is also a bit uncertain. One legend says that he secretly married Christian couples, which was a grave offense according to the persecuting government back in the day. Some versions say that his favor was done particularly for Roman soldiers who were not allowed to marry, since the government thought this would make them unwilling to risk their lives for the Roman government. Also, too, it says that Saint Valentine. Now, there was actually 2 Saint Valentines. One was in middle Italy, and the other one was in Rome. And kind of the theologians think that it was kind of the same person. He traveled back and forth from 2 cities, from Rome to the other cities. Of Terni in Rome, T-E-R-N-I, Terni. So one of the several theories about the origin of Valentine's Day celebration is they related to love and sentiment. When he was actually imprisoned, he was actually a physician. He was actually imprisoned for marrying the soldiers. And while he was in prison, he converted a jailer by restoring sight to the jailer's daughter. And that jailer became Catholic. And so there are also several theories about the origin of Valentine's Day that relates to love and sentiment. Some believe the Romans had a mid-February custom where boys drew the names of girls in honor of the sex and fertility goddess Februata, Juno, month of February. And pastors baptized this holiday, like some others, by substituting the names of saints such as Valentine to suppress the practice. Others maintain that the custom of sending Valentines on 14 February stems from the belief that birds began to pair on that date. Okay, and in 1477, the English associated lovers with the feast of Valentine, because on that day, every bird chooses his mate. Okay. So the custom of men and women writing love letters to their Valentine started on this day. Other Romance traditions became attached to this feast, including pinning bay leaves on your pillow on Valentine's Eve so that you will see your future mate that night when you go to sleep and you have a dream. So that's where that comes from. So it's all about love in this particular case, but it's not about candy, it's not about chocolates or teddy bears that you see up and down the street. It's not about hearts and stuff. It has nothing to do with that. What one of them says here is that the last part of that, it says that whatever the veracity of the legends surrounding the life of St. Valentine, we know that by this holy priest who he existed, that he died for the faith because he was a martyr, and during a time of bitter persecution, his very status as a martyr makes him an apt patron for love. Not all of us are called to prove our love by physical martyrdom, but we can live out our vocation to love and sacrificing ourselves in smaller ways by doing penance, by doing giving up what we call redemptive suffering. We're going to talk about that later. And of course, going to Mass and going to Holy Communion. Bingo. Okay? Anything else? So that's all there is to it about St. Valentine. So it's really not the important day that everybody makes it out to be. In America, it's a Hallmark holiday, period. Okay? So that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about Valentine's Day? It's like, really? Really? So I'm wearing red just to kind of make it fun. Okay, so the 10 Commandments. So I was going over the paper. Remember a couple of weeks ago when we started this class, I had the questionnaire. I asked you guys the questionnaire about what do you know about the Catholic Church, and the two top things that came up in the questionnaire was, number one, how to read the Bible, and number two, the 10 Commandments. Okay, very, very important. You guys have all got the papers. I hope everybody, if not, always got them here. Okay, the only one that's kind of worded differently is number 8. Okay, the original wording is called "Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor." Yes, go ahead and get one of these. Okay, it's for everybody. So I took a poll going through all of those letters, all those tests again, all this questionnaire and finding and stuff, and quite interestingly enough, number 5 and number 7 outdid everything else. What's number 5? Shall not kill. Yes. And number 7? Shall not steal. Yes. So we're going to go into those two particulars, and the third, close third, was number 6. Thou shalt not commit adultery. It's funny how adults kind of know that one, kind of instinctively. They know that one. Okay? So, any of you have been in a relationship or haven't, because of a relationship is kind of like falling apart because of adulterous activity? We'll leave it at that. Okay? So, generally, when it comes to the 10 Commandments, I didn't make them up. Joseph didn't make them up. Father Bob didn't make them up. Bishop Aklan didn't make them up. The Pope didn't make them up. God made them up. These are God's laws. These are God's rules. Okay, they're called the 10 Commandments. They're commands to do these things. They're not the 10 suggestions. They're not the 10 maybes. Okay, they're commandments. Now, I heard this from a priest on the radio a couple years ago. God gave us the 10 Commandments to make us happy. And the entire world hates him for it. Why? Because we want to do it our way. God can't tell me to go out and do whatever. You go to work and, well, they don't need those pens anymore. They'll take those pens, you know. You don't have to. I could say what I want about that person to myself. No. You can't do that. God says don't do that. He put these rules together. He put these laws together to show you who he is in relation to love. God is love. There is a difference between we as human beings are loving. We will only love. We can only be loving. God is love. And by putting the 10 Commandments, what he's doing is he's showing us how we can become like him. We will never be like him, but we can be close to him by following the 10 Commandments. And as time moved on, when Jesus was here, I don't know what Bible verse it is, what the young man says, I follow the 10 Commandments, and Jesus says the main 2 commandments are love God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, with all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And what Jesus basically did is he broke it down into 2 commandments. So the first 3 commandments are that first one, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and body. And the second 7 are love your neighbor as yourself. And we're going to go through that right now. Okay, and by the way, chime in anytime. You can chime.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay, so the first and the most important one is number 1. I am the Lord thy God. You shall have no gods before me. Our main duties to God are embodied in the following theological virtues, okay? Faith, hope, and charity, which is love, okay? Now, love God. He made everything. He made you. He made your family. He made your friends. He made everything. He is in charge of everything. And like I've been telling the teenagers, and I learned this from Father Chad Ripperger, if God stopped thinking about you, you wouldn't exist. You'd be gone if he stopped thinking about you. We have to understand how powerful God really, really is. He is extreme, beyond our comprehension. We can't begin to fathom how powerful he is. He can do anything he wants. When he does, it's because of love. And the reason why, and we're going to get into redemptive suffering later on. It's a really heavy-duty topic, but it's going to open up your eyes in regards to why bad things happen to good people, why bad people get away with doing bad things, why does the world have so much pain and suffering, why do we have so much pain and suffering. We're going to get into that. But when it comes to the first commandment, there are actually duties. We're actually supposed to do these 2 for God, okay? The first one, this commandment forbids idolatry, the worship of false gods and goddesses, and excludes polytheism. It excludes polytheism in the belief in many gods, insisted instead of monotheism, the belief in one God. This commandment forbids making golden calves, building temples to people, and worshiping statues, okay? Worshiping all that kind of stuff. So, modern day gods to all of us. This is our modern day God. We were just talking about it a few minutes ago. TikTok. Terrible. How many of you watch TikTok videos? Come on, be honest. Like on a regular basis, like an hour a day or 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day. Yeah. It's a mess. I don't do that. This has become our God lately. Okay? I don't live that anymore. I used to. Up until I started to really, really understand who God is for me, who Jesus is for me. So, God wants you to think of him always, because he loves you in a way that you can't understand until you get to see him face to face, and he will answer that question, why you should love him the way he does. Okay? So, does anybody have any questions so far about regards to number 1? Okay? So, it is important to know who God is. It's important to know who he and what he does for you, what he's doing for you, what he will do for you. If you submit to him, it's like your parents. They don't want anything bad happening to you. So they do what they do to make you happy. Because my mom has told me this many, many times. An adult or a parent can only be as happy as their saddest child. Did I say that right? Did I say that?
Yeah.
It can only be as happy as their saddest child. They don't want to see you suffering. They don't want to see you hurting. They don't want to see you crying. They don't want to see you in torment. They want you to be happy because they brought you into this world by the grace of God, whether we believe it or not. So God wants you to honor him because of everything he gives you, which we always take for granted. Okay, so does anybody have any questions in regards to number 1?
Just to add something,
Sure.
you guys might remember, I think it was the last topic when we were talking about accusing Yahweh of things. You remember that? And one of the things he gets accused of is being an egomaniac because he tells people to worship him. Well, it goes exactly with the first commandment. That commandment there for our benefit because God's unselfish, not because he's selfish. But one other thing about the first commandment is there is a sneaky way to break the first commandment. And you guys know what that sneaky way is? The devil's really clever. It's work. See, because work is a good thing, and so we can think, oh yeah, all right, so if I'm working all the time, then that's a good thing. But see, even work, which can be good, is good, can turn into something against the first commandment. So Satan is sneaky. Things like TikTok and pleasure and stuff like that, that's more obvious. But when it comes to work, where you're doing good things, even that can be taken to an extreme. So it's something that we just need to watch out for.
Exactly. And the perfect example is my brother. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks. He had pneumonia. He had an oxygen level of 80%. And the human body normally is 93. So he was in really bad shape. And the only reason why he was in the hospital, he worked himself into the hospital. Why? Because his whole crew, he's the meat manager at Vaughn's over here in Sylmar. His whole crew got COVID. So he was sick. They were all sick. So he worked for them. And the company didn't care about him at all. They just kept working to the point where he almost could not breathe. So they took him to the hospital and they immediately took him in because my brother has a comorbidity rate because he's had cancer in the past. So they brought him in. When he was suffering the night before he went into the hospital, we had a talk and he was telling me he felt so alone, so isolated, so nothing, that like God had abandoned him. He said, I had no hope. But in the back of his mind, he kept hearing that word, that's like, keep going, don't stop. That was the Holy Spirit talking to him because he gave up believing in God. He gave up that, like Joseph said, gave up the work. Work to him became his God for that time frame. We had a talk a couple of days ago, and he says, I'm not going to do that again. He said, if I feel tired, I'm calling it quits, I'm going to go home. He said, if I feel hungry, I'm going to stop and I'm going to eat something. Because the body is telling you what God has allowed it to happen. Okay? So that's something you want to take into consideration. When something starts taking over your life, when something starts becoming up to the point obsessive a little bit, you're not thinking about God. And that right there is the disobeying the first commandment. Okay? Does anybody have any questions? Any comments? No? Okay. So let's go to number 2. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God in vain. How many do that on a regular basis, 20, 30, 40 times a day? The biggest one that has become normal nowadays is called OMG. When you say OMG, I'm not saying it in the bad context, I'm going to say it in training context, but when you say that, what you're doing is you're doubting God's love. You're doubting his authority. You're doubting his love for you. That's a command. That's a breaking of the commandment. Unfortunately, a lot of people use Lord's name in vain. When something happens, they call out, they say Jesus' name in a derogatory manner. When people get pissed off, they say GD. Don't do that. Because my mom told me this a long time ago, and we've had major conversations of this. My mom is so correct on this one here. God is love. Why would he want to damn anybody? He would never, ever, ever damn anybody. He would never, ever send anybody to hell. We send ourselves to hell. So it's imperative that you do not use the Lord's name in vain. Now you can say to people, like it says in the Baltimore Catechism, God bless you, because what you're doing is you're asking God to bless that person. But when you're telling people OMG or GD this or that, or oh my, or JC, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because what you're doing is the person who loves you, the person who brought you in this world, the person who made you, the person who made everything, wants you to be close to him. And when you do that, you're breaking that commandment that he gave. Okay? So does that make sense, everybody? So before you speak, kind of take a look at what you're doing, what you're going to say. Take a second. It's like, and it takes a lot of training, because I work with guys. I work at a whole guide crew, 14 men. And I'm always trying to evangelize these guys. And when they say things like that, when they say Jesus' name, or they say, I tell them, hey, leave him out of this. And they know now when they're around me, they don't talk like that. I'm not afraid to, like I said before, I'm not afraid to go toe to toe with anybody on this planet, except for Muslims, like I said before. I'm not afraid to go toe to toe and tell people what you're doing is wrong. What you're doing is wrong. It's the Catholic faith. The Catholic faith is the one true church that has been around for 1,500 years. It's a long time. So when we talk about taking the Lord's name in vain, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
Is the Ten Commandments only for Catholics?
Nope, it's for everybody.
So, no, I mean,
No, it's for everybody. Yeah,
religions.
absolutely. Yeah, it's in the Bible. And we're going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Okay, it actually comes from the Bible. As a matter of fact, I have I got this from a website, the Protestant version and the Catholic version. Okay, the Protestant version, they go back to the thing with Protestants is they call everything is called sola scriptura. What do you think that sounds like? Sola means only, scriptura, scripture. They only go by what's in the Bible. Now the problem with they continue to hit to Catholics is the Blessed Virgin Mary. The word Trinity is not in the Bible. The word purgatory is not in the Bible. And there's other words that I'm not right the context right now. But that's what they hit the Catholics for. And one of the things that they did is the original way it's written in the book of Exodus in our Bibles is written in the Jewish tradition, not in the Greek tradition and the Aramaic tradition, and not written in English tradition. So they split up the first commandment, and they combined the ninth and 10th commandment as one commandment. But in the Roman Catholic Church, they split it up because back in the day, that's what people were doing. So does that make sense? Does that make that they're splitting things up? Yes.
Is saying "Oh my GOSH" the same thing as disobeying the second commandment?
Well, it's bad language. I mean, it's you're not saying it towards God, but what you're doing is you're defaming your intellect. You're defaming who you are. You're smarter than that. I mean, you're all smarter than that. Using bad language, you're smarter than that. You don't have to use bad language. If something happens, me personally, I say, ay, ay, ay. You hear me saying ay, ay, 30 times a day at work when something happens, when something falls, or I hit my, ay, ay, ay. I'm just announcing that something is not working. I try not to use bad language. Try not to at all. And of course, when the Dodgers are losing and stuff, that's a whole different story, but that's beside the point. But I'm consciously aware when I use language. I'm constantly aware when I'm speaking to people. I'm constantly aware when somebody says something or I'm in a situation where that happens. And I learned this from my brother, and I'm still working on it diligently, that when somebody does say the God's name in vain, whether they say OMG or JC or whatever stuff, I step back and I say to myself, blessed be his holy name. Blessed be his holy name. I say it 3 times. Blessed be his holy name. Jesus my Lord. And then last Friday, somebody said that in a very direct, and I said, blessed be his holy name. Lord, let me take on his responsibility. Let me take his cross. Let me suffer for him. Nothing happened. It was a normal day. But I'm offering myself up to Jesus. Offering myself up for his suffering, because I don't want these people to go to hell. Okay? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, wonderful.
And even though gosh is a better substitute than saying the actual name, an even better substitute is goodness. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, oh my goodness.
Yeah, my mom says that all the time. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she says, for heaven's sake. I was like, what? That's when she's exasperated. For heaven's sake. That is so old-fashioned. But you know what? That's what she was trained about. She was trained by the old nuns way back in the day. Back in the 40s and 50s. She was trained by old-fashioned nuns to say, oh my goodness, for heaven's sake. And then I learned from Vince Scully, you guys are a big Dodger fan again, he instead of saying, uses Jesus' name in vain, he would say cheese and rice. It's like, cheese and rice. It's like, what? Yeah, think about it. It's like, okay, that's cool, that works. It's like, okay, so that's taking, you want to stay away from that. So start listening to yourself before you speak. Okay? Start listening, start thinking about what you're going to say. And if somebody does say something bad, I know it I feel it in my bones. I feel it when somebody says something bad. I'm sure you do too. Once you start practicing this, you're going to start to feel it. You're going to start to hear him say it, and you're going to feel your core is going to start to shake. Offer that up to Jesus. Okay?
Yeah, that is very true. I know in my own life, just changing my ways and the way you speak, and it does change to where it actually becomes offensive when you hear it.
Mm-hmm,
People
absolutely.
swear it hits you.
It hits me in the
It
right.
hits you deep.
Right, it does. When I hear they use the Lord's name,
it really does.
It really hurts me. It's like, wow. And then I say, step back. I literally take a step back and say, blessed be his holy name. Blessed be his holy name. Jesus, my Lord.
Yeah,
Let me atone for their sins.
Yeah, any foul language.
Absolutely. And it shows kind of your intellectual level too.
Yeah.
Hi, other than, I don't know which classroom it is, just like for confirmation classes?
For the adults,
Yes,
in English or Spanish?
just either or.
Father Norm, okay, well, you want to talk about that? Because, Father Norm used to do the classes.
Okay.
All right, so number 3, the third commandment. Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. I don't think you really have to say much about this one at all. Okay? Back in the old days, in the Jewish, when Jesus, everything stopped on Friday nights at sundown. Everything. Okay? When my mom was a little girl, when she would go to St. Ferdinand's over here in San Fernando, on Saturday night at 5 o'clock, everything shut down. Everything. Not in no markets, no stores, no nothing. The bars obviously would be open. The bowling alley would be open where they serve booze. The movie theater would be open because they made money, and that's with entertainment. But everybody who went to work, who had a job, who owned a business, they closed at 5 o'clock on Saturday night, and they didn't open up until Monday morning at 8 o'clock or whatever it was and stuff. In some places, the restaurants sometimes would open up late on Sunday nights after church, but that was how they honored God. They kept the Sabbath. We don't do that anymore. But it's important that we go to Mass. We have to go to Mass. You have to go to Catholic Mass. It is a mortal sin. That is one of the ones that continues to continue practically everybody I've ever teach stuff. That's the number one thing for them, is they don't go to Mass on a regular basis. If you are a baptized Catholic and you go to Holy Communion, you've done your confession, you've done your confirmation, if you don't go to Holy Mass, that is a mortal sin. You will actually go to hell by not going to Mass. But why wouldn't you want to go to Mass? Why wouldn't you want to do that? It's important. You want to feel good. And by going to Holy Mass and understanding what the Mass is about, and we're going to talk about Mass in great detail. We're going to talk about that. About what you get out of going to Holy Mass. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so does anyone, yeah.
Sabbath, sorry. What's the definition of
Sabbath? It's the Jewish word for Shabbat.
Shabbat,
Yeah,
Sabbath.
Shabbat,
Yeah.
Sabbath. It's basically the day that you atone for the week, the day that you stop and honor God. And I don't really know what the English translation is for the word Sabbath, but
Just Sabbath, yeah.
It's
Day of rest.
a day of rest.
Day of
Yeah,
rest.
you're not supposed to work. You're not supposed to do any physical. And there's a couple times in the Bible where Jesus has been accused of people doing things on the Sabbath. That's like healing. It was just a couple days ago where he was healing the man who had a withered hand on the Sabbath, and they held him responsible for that. And he turned the tables on them and told them, "Is it better to follow your old rules that you can't do anything than to help somebody who's in desperate need of help?" He turned it on them. The Pharisees did not like that. The Sadducees did not like that at all, because he called them out. Jesus was not afraid to go toe to toe. He was not afraid to call out the people and the rulers at the time. You want to say something about that? Just say something like that.
Oh, just, sometimes people, you might get this where they say stuff like, so is it okay to go to Mass Saturday night? And it totally is okay. Because, well, for two reasons, really. First, the church permits it, so it's fine. But one reason why it's a good way to keep holy the Sabbath is because think of it as you're putting God first in your Sunday so much that you're actually starting on Saturday night. So I'm not saying it's better to go on Saturday night. I'm not saying it's worse. But I am saying it's perfectly fine to go Saturday night if that works for you guys, because that could be a good way to keep the Sabbath. Okay? The main thing about keeping the Sabbath Sunday is make sure it's not like every other day. That's the main thing here. Is, don't do your normal jobs. Don't try to make more time for God.
Yeah, try not to cut the lawn. Try not to do your laundry. Try not to clean the house. Or something. If you can, do that afterwards.
Even shopping. If you
shopping.
can do shopping on another day, it's better to do it on another day.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me personally, because I've been doing this for over 20 years, and finally the rabbi that I work for, he retired. But I used to I have a DJ company. I do just myself now. I used to have 3 guys with me. Now it's just me. But I also do live sound I'm a live sound engineer. And the rabbi that I worked for, he had an actual Jewish orchestra. He actually had like 6 and 7 guys, and they would do Jewish weddings, the Jewish traditional Orthodox Jewish music, and it would always be on Sundays, either Thursday nights, very late Saturday nights after 9 o'clock, after the sun would go down. Very seldom did that happen, but always on Sunday nights. And that's one of the things is like, well, why do you, my mom said, you're not supposed to work on Sunday. I said, but we looked at it. I actually asked Father Bob about it. He says, yeah, you can work that because what you're doing is you're honoring a Jewish tradition working on a Sunday, which is for us, for the Jews and stuff, it was already okay to do that, but to work in praising God in the Jewish tradition was a good thing. So that's why I never had a problem working on Sundays with the rabbi. And that, working with the rabbi, is how I learned how to pray. He taught me how to pray. Just within the last 5 years, he taught me how to pray based on watching the Jewish people and their ceremonies that they would have. It was very, very cool. If you ever get a chance to go online and look at a Jewish wedding celebration, it's gonna blow your mind. It's gonna totally blow your mind. We'll talk about that later on and stuff. But it's. How many of you have ever been to a Jewish wedding? Isn't it blow your mind?
Yeah.
I mean, I did a DJ at a bat mitzvah on Saturday night after 8 o'clock, and it was very low key but it was low key. But when you have 150 people dancing on the floor to this traditional Jewish music and stuff, it's pretty trippy. It's an eye opening, isn't it? It's eye opening. It's so cool.
It's cool to explore other cultures.
Yeah, so you get to see a different culture and the Jewish tradition. The Jewish is where the Catholic faith comes from. Okay. So does anybody have questions about number 3? Okay. All right. So number 4. Honor your father and your mother. You are all adults, so I don't think you have to really worry about living under your parents' wings and stuff like that. But when I teach the teenagers and I teach the younger folks, this is a biggie. This is a huge one for them. It is like an anchor. They have to walk around with this. This one gets them every single time. Okay, so we have this. I have this thing. It's called the mortal sin checkoff list, and it's basically for teachers. But I'm going to read you a couple of things they have on here in regards to the 4th commandment. Okay, honor thy father and thy mother, and it says here, do you fail to love, help, or obey your parents? My parents are getting older, so I try to be there as much as I possibly can. Do you disrespect them when they say things to you, or ask you for something, or oh man, oh come on, do you do that? Second of all, do you neglect? Do you physically or mentally abuse them by calling them names or something like that? I don't think you would, but under your breath, like, God, that woman, she's driving me, something like that. For me, it's like, my mom, she can be a pill sometimes. She can be this big red pill sometimes, but Because she's old, she's set in her ways. She grew up in the 40s and 50s. Back then, everything was a completely different world. Nowadays, there's no shame anymore. Back then, there was shame. So she always has an opinion about what's going on. And Mom, relax, take it easy. So leave it at that. Number 4. Where's number 5? I think I got this wrong. I think I missed a page here. Oh, okay.
You want to use this?
Yeah, please. I think on mine. I think I missed a page. 4. Bless you.
Thank you.
Okay. To end with number 4, the parents thing is like, eventually we're going to have to take care of our parents, one way, shape, or form. Okay. I'm going to tell you straight up, they're going to be difficult because they want to do it their way. They're used to doing it their way. They want to do it their way and stuff. They can be challenging. When my grandmother passed away at 99, and it was kind of a family thing. My brother, myself, and my mom kind of took care of my grandmother my grandmother was a pill. I mean, she grew up during the Great Depression. She grew up during World War II. She came from nothing. She had a job. She bought a house. She lived a life, and she was tough. She was very, very tough. But I learned from that. So if you can see how these people are trying to tell you what they're doing underneath all of that, whatever they're doing, they're trying to love you. They're trying to show you, don't do what I did, or don't do what hurt me in the past. They don't want you to do that, okay? So I'm just gonna leave it at that. You guys have any questions about that? Number 4, the 4th commandment, honor thy father and mother. And also too, what it comes down to, I forgot about that. It's also the same with authority, any authority figure, whether it be your boss, whether it be the owner of your company, whether it be a policeman, whether it be a judge, whether it be a state representative, a national representative, somebody who is in authority. That's breaking a commandment too. Now, whether their intentions are good for you, you have the ability and you have the capacity to stand up and question that. Even with bad priests and bad bishops and a pope, we can stop it there. We have authority. It's in the catechism. Say we can stop and question them. Why are they doing what they're doing? We can stop and question authority. But when you stop and question authority in a physical manner, then you're blowing up number 4. You want to say something about that? Because we all know what's been happening over the last couple of years. We all see what's going on in the news and stuff like that. Authority is being challenged, but it's being challenged in the wrong way. In the wrong way. And they're taking advantage of it. They're taking advantage of us who are standing up. So if you look at it through the context of the 10 Commandments, which this country was built on, then we'll be able to, I'm sure we'll be a lot happier if you take it in the context of standing up what's right, standing up through God's eyes, standing up through God's laws, and we'll be happier than that. Sorry, don't worry about that. Okay, does anybody have any questions about that, number 4? All right. Number 5. Thou shalt not kill. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Okay. If you stop and think about it, take just 10 seconds to think about it. Probably the most important rule in the United States of America is number 5. Do you all agree with me on that? If you look at any type of law enforcement, any type of legal, any type of government, anything that has to do with the Christian church, Catholic church, Jewish, any religion, basically number 5 is the number 1 rule why America has been successful. Because that's the most important probably, okay? It is our leaders, their duty is to protect us. And thou shalt not kill is one of them. Now, when they were just talking about it last night on the radio. When we go to war, that's called justifiable retribution. We can do that. if somebody is trying to come and attack you and hurt you and kill you or stuff, you have the capacity to do it, to stop them. You can do that. When we go to war, it's because we're trying to stop an evil, a major evil. That's what World War II was, big, huge mess because of that. Okay? So, we do have the capacity. If you guys want to read it through the catechism, you can. It's a very lengthy section, but it explains everything that is through the Catholic Church, which is where the Constitution basically came from. Okay? So, does anybody have any questions? I'm not going to say any more about that because I'm pretty sure you guys all know thou shalt not kill. Okay?
And I don't think anyone here is even tempted to kill, but one thing that all of us are tempted to is you can actually kill someone's reputation.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be kind of 5 and 8 is kind of the same thing. But go ahead. Yeah.
Kind of together, yeah, because you're killing them in a way, and yeah, maybe it's not a bloody murder or anything, but it does take away something of value that belongs to the person. So it's just something to be aware of and watch out for.
It says here, thou shalt not kill. It says, better translation from the Hebrew would be thou shalt not murder. A subtle distinction, but an important one to the church. Killing an innocent person is considered murder. But killing an unjust aggressor to preserve your own life is still killing, but it isn't considered murder or immoral. Okay? The 5th commandment forbids us to harm the body or soul of others or our own. We sin against the body of others when we assault others physically, wound, or kill them. When through abuse or mistreatment we embitter and shorten their life. The killing of a human being is allowed to individuals in self-defense, to the state when necessary, as in war, as punishment for heinous crimes, or its soldiers to act in the name of the state in defense of its borders. Okay? So that's considered justifiable retribution if somebody is trying to come after you and kill you. So it's justifiable retribution. You can do that. Now, again, we never said we're going to get political, but I'm going to say one thing about that in politics. The USA, in its history, has never, ever, ever gone after somebody that didn't have it coming to them in war. Okay? We have never started a war. We've always gone after somebody because of that. Because of number 5, justifiable retribution. When they've hurt America and they've the sovereign body and all that good stuff like that. So that's the only thing I'm going to ever say about that, because that, again, is the number 1 thing that America kind of runs on. Okay? So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Thou shalt not kill. Don't kill. Don't hurt anybody. Be good. Okay. Number 6. You shall not commit adultery. This is a big one. This is a really big one. What is adultery?
Intimacy?
Let's see what the catechism says. You shall not commit adultery. In the 6th commandment, God forbids immodesty, unchastity, and everything that leads to such sins in regards to the body. Okay? The 6th and 9th commandments honor human sexuality. This commandment forbids the actual physical act of having immoral sexual activity, specifically adultery, which is sex with someone else's spouse or a spouse cheating on their partner. This commandment also includes fornication, sex between unmarried people, prostitution, pornography, homosexual activity, masturbation, group sex, rape, incest, pedophilia, bestiality, and necrophilia. Now, I don't want to go into any of those details because I'm pretty sure you all know what those are, but it's anything that is of sexual nature that is against God's purity. The thing is, it says in the Bible, again, I'm not a Bible thumper, so I can't tell you what verse and blah, 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 but it says that everybody's body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Well, the Holy Spirit is God. And God is clean and pure and holy, righteous. And if you're doing that, what you're doing is you're defaming God. Because we have God in us, because we've all been baptized. It's like going to church and spray painting on the church walls inside something derogatory. How terrible is that? It's exactly what you're doing when it comes to the sixth commandment. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. And unfortunately, this country is dealing with a lot of this, what is it? Transgender ideology. Just all that whole man being a man, woman being a woman. That's it. But they've gone and expanded it to the point where people are just so confused. And I wish I could say more about it. We don't have time to, but I could say about what Father Chad Ripperger had said about that confusion. It is from the devil. Pure and simple, straight up from the devil. And the devil, Satan, has a demon who roams this world, because remember, this is God's planet, but this is the devil's playground. And there is this demon, and his name is, somebody may have heard of his name, is Baal. Okay? He is the demon of sexual impurity. Okay? He doesn't do things to you, but he's great at making us, he's tempting us. Great at, because that's what we feel. It's something we feel. Okay? And last thing I'm going to say about that, in 1917, Our Lady of Fatima, the Blessed Virgin Mary, appeared to the 3 children in Fatima, Portugal. And she said that the number one thing that sends people to hell is sins of the flesh. Our Lady of Fatima said that to the 3 children. The number one reason people go to hell is because of sins of the flesh. Okay? So, don't have sins of the flesh. It's that easy. Does anybody have any questions about that? Any comments? Okay.
And a big part of that too is being careful what you watch, because like.
Absolutely. Well, that's what I say. Yeah, pornography.
It's not like most of us are gonna go out and watch an X-rated movie, but some of those R-rated movies, they got some things there that aren't the best or TV mature. I mean, we got to make choices, right? We don't have to watch everything out there. So, like my wife and I, we made a choice. We watched shows together, but we decided after a bad experience, we were watching a TV mature show, and then they had a scene, and we're like, you know what? We had no business seeing that, and so we made a decision. We're never ever going to watch TV mature for the rest of our lives. Now, I'm not saying you have to do that, but what I'm saying is we got to be really careful about what the eyes see, because once you see it, you can't unsee it, and then the image is there, and that can mess you up. So it's just being careful.
And that's a really great point, because Joseph, you hit a point for me really important, because since the pandemic started, I was unemployed for 6 months waiting for my job to come back, and they never did. So I'm watching TV and I'm watching all these movies and HBO and all that kind of stuff, and I started to notice a pattern. Every movie, every TV show, everything had something to do with sexual innuendo, homosexuality, bestiality, pornography, blah, 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 and on and on and on and on. It's like, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm completely done with this. Miraculously enough, a movie came out, and it's like, okay, cool, it was on HBO, and it was the Downton Abbey movie. I didn't know, I knew about it, but okay, well, I watched it. Instantly fell in love with it. My mom has the Downton Abbey series, so I watched it. And it has some things here and there, very, very small, because it takes place back in the early 1900s. Fell in love with it. British television. Well, like candy or something, or whatever. You like it, you want more. So I started watching British television. Wow! British television just destroys American TV. Destroys it! Because the storylines are so great. Acting is fantastic. The girls are super duper beautiful. Awesome. So now that's all I do is I watch 2 television shows during the week on American TV. I watch nothing else but British television. Masterpiece Theater. Because it's good, clean, wholesome, and all the stories are always good, clean, wholesome stories. British television. If you want to watch some really, really great TV shows, Masterpiece Theater. Masterpiece Theater. Good stuff. So that's my personal thing. That's testimony on that one. Okay? So does anybody have any questions? All right, we're going to go on to number 7. You shall not steal. The 7th and 10th commandments focus on respecting and honoring the possession of others. This commandment forbids the act of taking someone else's property. The Catholic Church believes that this commandment also denounces cheating people of their money or property, depriving workers of their just wage, or not giving employers a full day's work or a full day's pay. Embezzlement, fraud, tax evasion, vandalism. If you drive down the freeways in Los Angeles, you'll see what I'm talking about. Are considered extensions of violations of the seventh commandment. You shall not steal means it forbids harming others in regards to their goods and property. We harm others in regards to their goods and property when we rob or steal, defraud or profiteer, fail to return found borrowed goods, go into debt recklessly, or fail to pay our debts, or damage property to others. Okay? Now, I don't think you guys want to go into debt. I don't think you guys want to destroy your neighbor's property. I don't think you want to steal stuff that you don't really need. Okay? But like I was telling to one of the guys at work today, he's a Christian. He's kind of an outdoor Christian. And I used the word concupiscence. And he was like, what? He'd never heard that word before. I said, well, I'm giving him a little bit of catechesis. Concupiscence is the tendency to sin from Adam and Eve. They broke God's law, and they brought in the original sin. And our original sin is for us the kind of tendency to do bad. And I was telling him the example today was like, I tell this to the teenagers. You're out shopping one day, and things are busy, and you're getting tired, and you're a little tired, a little hungry and stuff like that, and you're walking past the liquor store, and the doors are wide open, and right in the front there is a big old bunch of bags of potato chips or candy or something. And you walk by and it's like, oh, wow. Oh, wow. And then all of a sudden you look and you see the owner of the store is in the back screaming and yelling at one of his employees. Ah! All commotion going on in the back, and there's nobody in the front. And there's cars driving by 40, 50 miles an hour. They don't care what you're doing. Who's going to miss that little bag of chips? The little bag of chips, and off you go. Okay, so it costs us 99 cents or something like that. Our tendency to sin, that's called concupiscence. What you just did there was violate the seventh commandment. Thou shalt not steal. Oh, it's a harmless thing. I kind of used to do that too before I was as a cafeteria Catholic. I love Post-it notes. And they would always, at my job that I had back in the late 90s, early 2000s, they used to leave Post-it notes laying all over the place. I'd find them and I'd try to put them back together and stuff, and I finally noticed that I have all these Post-it notes on my desk, and the company's never going to know that, so I would take them home and I use them at home. But once I started exploring my faith, I started, wait a minute. I'm taking company property. It's not mine. They paid for it, and I'm using it for my benefit. That's not right. That's totally not right. So now I don't do that. And yes, I went to confession, but you're not supposed to commit your sins, but whatever. But just that's what I'm talking about. You go to work, you get some extra pens and stuff like that. Leave them. You don't need them. They probably end up sitting in your desk for a year and a half, 2, and then they're going to turn old and whatever. You got to throw them away anyway. So, okay, does that make sense? Yeah. Does that make my point across? All right. Anybody have any questions so far in regards to any of the sins so far?
And it can be as simple as getting something to eat and getting a water cup and filling it up with soda. Mm-hmm. You've intentionally taking something that you didn't pay for.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a tricky thing.
Yeah,
we don't, but I'm just saying, it's true. Or you're at Home Depot, I had a guy say, God, it ended up in my bag, they put it in there. I'm like, well, you didn't pay for it.
Yeah.
Well, they owe me, I'm here all the time. I mean, you start to justify these things.
Justify yourself, exactly.
And then these little things like, I'm just putting a little Coca-Cola in my cup.
Yeah.
It sounds little, but it's a way of thinking.
Exactly. And this quick story, way back in the early 80s, right as I got out of high school, I kind of knew, I still know what good and bad is and right and wrong and stuff. One time my sister and I were at a rock concert, and we were sitting in the seats. I was sitting on the Ed's seat, and she was sitting next to me. And there was this girl, and she got up to go something before the show started, and her wallet fell out of her pocket. And she started walking up the street, and my sister and I looked at each other, and I grabbed the wallet, and I went and I ran and I gave it to her. I said, "Hey, you dropped your wallet." She said, "Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God." And like, "Oh, this is beautiful. Oh wow. Here, I'm gonna give you that." No, I don't want it. She said, "That was all my money I had. I had $300 in that wallet to buy T-shirts for her friends and family and stuff. She had all this money to buy all this stuff, and it was gone. It would have been gone had I been a bad person and kept it for myself. That would have destroyed her whole evening. It would have been the worst concert she had ever been to. It's something that it's ingrained, like it's ingrained in me at that point. You know, the small stuff you used to get away with, but now I don't do that anymore. But the big stuff, if you know yourself, you will know that's not right. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that so far? No questions? All right. Number 8. You shall not tell lies against your neighbor. Again, it's written kind of in an English, in an American way. Basically, number 8 is, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. That is a very, very big one in America. Very, very big. Okay? What do you guys think about when it says, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor? I want to hear what you guys think. Yeah, go ahead.
Pointing at someone else for something you did, or what do you mean?
That's part of it, yeah, absolutely.
Spreading
Telling
rumors.
lies about someone else.
Telling lies for something, for sure. Well,
Spreading rumors.
spreading rumors, exactly. Talking bad behind people's back. Saying things that are not true about that person. And if they are true, saying them out loud anyways. Keep it to yourself. You want to hear it, okay? Because what you're doing is you're defaming somebody's integrity. You're defaming somebody's livelihood. Like Joseph was saying earlier about the 5th commandment. What you're doing is you're actually killing that person in your soul, and you're hurting that person who's God's creation. It's just as equal as you are. They were saying this in the radio just this morning. You know what? If we all stood up and we all took off our skin, we would all look exactly the same. Think about that. Every single human being on this planet, if you took off their skin, we would all look identical. Okay? Put on our skins back on, now we're all completely different. And then you'll start to see how many people, ew, look at that person. Ooh, look at that guy. Oh, look at that haircut. Oh, look at that. He's got the mole on his face. Oh, that guy's got a bum arm or whatever. You know. You don't want to do that. The 8th commandment says, condemns lying, because God is regarded as the author of all truth. The church believes that the humans are obligated to honor the truth. The most obvious way to fulfill this commandment is to not lie. Intentionally deceive another by speaking a falsehood. Okay? The 8th commandment forbids false witness, saying what one knows to be untrue in order to deceive. In every sin against the character and good name of others. My mom says this to me all the time. Who do you think you are? What makes you better than that person over there? How do you know what that person is living? How do you know that person is not struggling? Just because that guy's driving a Mercedes, it doesn't mean that his life is any better than yours. I used to work for a financial services company. They used to talk about that. They said the guy has this beautiful house, absolutely gorgeous house. And they would go talk to him about his financial service, and they'd walk into his house, and he had no furniture in his house at all. Absolutely none. He had a table like this and a couple of chairs. And his food that he was eating were those top ramen cups or whatever the things are. That was his dinner. He had no, because he spent all his money on this beautiful big house. Okay? People would see him, he's beautiful and stuff. And then if they were to see what it really lived like, what would they say about him then? That would be, again, against his character. Maybe he doesn't want furniture. Maybe he can't afford furniture. You know? Think about it. Don't say bad things about people, because they can turn around and say bad things about you. And like I say all the time to the teenagers, and we'll end it with this one, how many of you are perfect? Okay. Anybody who raises their hand and says, if you are perfect, my mom's got a pool that you can walk on. Okay? Okay? Because, and I tell everybody this, the only reason why Jesus could walk on water is because he didn't have any sin to weigh him down. Stands to reason. Then somebody posed the question, well, what about the Blessed Virgin Mary? She had no sin either. Ah, that's true. She probably could have walked on water, but then that would have upstaged her son. And the Blessed Virgin Mary is not about that. The reason why she is who she is and why she is where she is because of her profound humility. Her humility. She was so humble, beyond what you could possibly think of. That's why God chose her. And because of her humility, the devil hates her. Because he can't employ it. He can't work it. He can't use it against her to have her sin. The devil tried it with Jesus because he knew who Jesus was. We're going to talk about that when Easter comes around. We're going to talk about when the devil tempted Jesus in the desert, when in the 40 days of the desert when he's there. The devil wasn't tempting Jesus as God. He was tempting him as Jesus as human. The God-man. 100% God, 100% man. He was tempting the 100% man. Jesus was hungry. Jesus did know who was the power. He did know this, and the devil was tempting him. But the devil could never tempt the Blessed Virgin Mary at all. And you can go online and look up Father Chad Ripperger talking about the humility of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And it's mind-blowing. When I was writing my notes, I was literally crying. Because that's how perfect she is. And that's why I love her. I love her to death. When I die, I want her to come get me. I want her. Okay? That's the 8th commandment. Any questions so far? Okay, number 9. You shall not covet thy neighbor's wife. Kind of like number 6. The 9th commandment forbids the intentional desire and longing for immoral sexuality. To sin in the heart. Jesus says to lust after a woman or a man in your heart with the desire, and you will have immoral sex with them. Just as human life is a gift from God and needs to be respected, defended, and protected, so too is human sexuality. Catholicism regards human sexuality as a divine gift, so it's considered sacred in the proper context, which is marriage. The 6th and 9th commandment requires us to practice modesty and live chastely. To keep ourselves chaste, we must control our thoughts and desires, and keep ourselves occupied as far as possible by avoiding that is a threat to chastity. Say prayers. Say a rosary. Watch EWTN. Listen to Catholic radio. Go on these Catholic websites. That'll keep your mind off of that. Okay? The body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Catholic Church regards your body as the temple of the Holy Spirit, like I said before. Okay? It's important. It's important to you. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to point fingers and stuff. But how many people do you know who have done bad things and then regretted it? And that regret goes on and on and on and on, and it starts to eat you from the inside. I've actually known people who've actually almost committed suicide because of it. When that happens, go to confession. Don't be afraid to tell the priest or the bishop. Don't be afraid to tell them everything, because there's nothing they haven't heard already. They're trained to do that. They've heard it all. Tell them, I'm weak. this is happening. I'm suffering because this has happened. I broke up with my girlfriend a while back, and I was suffering because I really, really liked this girl. I really, really, really liked this girl. I thought maybe she was the one. She wasn't, but I found out by talking to the priest that that was the devil employing my thoughts through unchaste activity. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay? And lastly, number 10, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. The 10th commandment forbids the wanting or taking someone else's property. Along with the 7th commandment, this commandment condemns theft and the feelings of envy, greed, jealousy in reaction to what other people have. The 10th commandment forbids the desire to take for our own goods the property of others. This first part that I said on there condemns the theft and the feelings of envy, greed, jealousy. That's 3 of the 7 deadly sins, which we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks. How many of you know the 7 deadly sins just off the top of your head? Give me one of them.
Pride.
Pride. Number 1. Pride. Number 1. That's why that's why Lucifer, as the angel of light, his whole entire role was to enlighten the Blessed Virgin Mary. His whole purpose in life, in his being, was to enlighten the Blessed Virgin Mary, her soul. But when he found out God's plan about Jesus coming to the world to save us, he says, I'm not going, non serviam, I will not serve a human being from a human woman. Are you kidding me? I'm a 12-winged angel. I'm the greatest there ever was. I'm the greatest there is. I'm God's right-hand man. Pride. We're going to talk about that in great detail when we come to the 7 deadly sins. Okay? That gets us into huge, huge problems all the time. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Lastly, we only got just a few minutes left here. As written in the Bible, if you go to Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 17, you don't have to do it now, but you can see it if you want to. They have it written in the Holy Bible as number 1 and number 2. Number 2 is kind of pushed like 2 commandments in one, which is what we have. And number 9 and 10 is 1 commandment. That's the 10 commandments. Now the reason why they change, it says on here that's changed by man, because in the Hebrew tradition, back then they didn't have, I forgot how they said that, they didn't have what we have today. They didn't have what they had in the 15th century, what they had in the 18th century, what they had in the 20th century, and what they have in the 21st century. So they had to split it up in order for people to understand that God is the number 1 purpose, should be the number 1 purpose, always be the number 1 purpose, because again, he gave you everything. Everything that you got is from God. And as a side note, people always say, good luck, good luck, good luck. I'm sorry to break it to you, there's no such thing as luck. There's no such thing as luck. Because God's in control. He lets you have good, whatever it is, good prosperity, good providence, or not. Okay? I like to kind of play, when I go teach, I like to kind of play Fantasy 5. And every week I go and I get this, I'll just pick up number and stuff, a random number. And for the last 3-4 months or so, every time I play Fantasy 5, I get 2 numbers all the time. It's another to get a free play. But I'm still having to put more money into it. But I always get a free play. That's God's providence. He's allowing me to play that. He knows it's not taking over my life. Okay? That's the one thing. The other thing is too, is that this is God's world. There's no such thing as karma. God does not does retribution for, how do I say, retribution?
Retribution, yeah.
Yeah, but how, can you explain a little bit about retribution? Like, he doesn't get back at people.
Yeah, a retribution is payback.
Payback.
Yeah.
Perfect.
If
I'm
you
looking
do
for a
good,
word.
yeah, you do good, it comes back to you. You do bad, it comes back to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They call that karma. Karma, God does not operate with karma. There's no such thing as karma. They made it sound like karma, as comes from the Eastern religions, which is all false. That's all demonic too. We go there. Karma, there's no such thing as karma. God allows things to happen to you, good and bad, so that you can understand how much He loves you and how much He wants you to be closer to Him. That's why He allows suffering. And again, we're going to talk about redemptive suffering. It's a really big, heavy subject. But once you understand what redemptive suffering is, it's going to open up a whole world for you in regards to you being happy, joyful. You're going to be filled with joy when you truly understand that. I was paid a compliment a couple weeks ago. Somebody that we pray with, and she asked me, how come you have so much energy? You got so much energy. And I'm kind of like, Jesus. Because I believe in Jesus. I love Jesus. And He wouldn't let bad things happen to me. But if He does allow bad things to happen to me, it's because He wants me to be closer to Him. So I'm always asking, Jesus, help me be closer to you. I'm at Mass. Help me, Jesus. Help me find you. Okay? Any parting words?
I would just like to say that you got this list here, and I know we're going to talk about the sacraments a lot more. That's part of the reason we're doing this class. But between now and then, this is a really good way to prepare your confession. Just that list, you can kind of go through and say, have we done that? It kind of jogs your memory, so that you don't just go unprepared in your confession. It's a good list to prepare it by.
Yes, absolutely. Read them over. Go online again. Go on these websites. And look up the 10 Commandments, and look up stories, and look up avenues to go by, and look up how the Catholic websites talk about the 10 Commandments and what it does to make you a better person, make you a better person. I say this all the time. You've probably heard me say it before. I'll say it again. I say it practically every 2-3 times a week. Don't do what makes you happy. Do what makes you better. Don't do anything that makes you happy. Do what makes you better. My best friend, the one father passed away, he came up, he told me that a couple years ago. I've never forgotten that. That is the greatest thing. Do what makes you better, because you're never going to ever be truly, truly, truly happy until you get to heaven and you have the beatific vision with God Himself. By the way, beatific means you're actually going to see, you are going to be a saint in heaven. You will be face to face to God, and He's going to explain everything that you ever wanted to know. You're going to have complete full knowledge of the entire everything. You're going to be one with God. That's called the beatific vision. But until then, you'll never ever be happy in this world. And just like this past weekend, Friday was the first apparition, the memorial of the first apparition of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Lourdes, France, where I went, which changed my life. The Blessed Virgin Mary said to Saint Bernadette, I cannot promise you happiness in this world, but only in the next. Okay? So again, don't do what makes you happy. Do what makes you better. Better today, better than today, better than tomorrow. Do what makes you better. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any final questions? Any final comments? Anybody want to throw any tomatoes at me? No? Okay, cool. Let's pray it out. Yes.
One question, I was talking to my
Sure.
daughter about, she's going to catechism, and I was talking to my daughter, and I told her about the whole 3 fingers.
Mhm.
And then she told me that they taught her how to do a cross.
You can do a cross. That's more of a Latino thing, more so than the 3. I learned the 3 from Saint Bernadette herself. I mean, she didn't tell me, but there's in her book, she talks about how when she was as a novice and before she became a nun, there was a couple of nuns in her place where she was and stuff. They just signed her with that. She slowed them down and taught them to show them how to do the sign of the cross stuff. But you can do it as a absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, and you can do that for sure. Yeah, as long as you're doing the sign of the cross, again, the demon's hot. They hightail it out of there. They can't stand that because what you're doing is you're honoring God. And that's probably the most important, if not the most important thing in your life, is to honor God every moment of your day if you have to. Okay? All right. So, again, if you guys want to take another couple of these and stuff, take it to your family members, show them and stuff, take a picture of the Catholic websites. Got a sign-in sheet here. Okay, we got our sign-in sheet here, and we're not going to be here again next week. Next Monday we are off.